Yes, indeedy, folks. It's the Beer Drinker's Guide to the Great Wahoo. Hi, my mateys. And here it is, Thanksgiving Day. One of the common disappointments of Thanksgiving is that we like to be skiing by this date. Seldom does it happen, but to appease the snow gods, or perhaps just to do a little wishful thinking, it's time to ski Bogus. For you Great Wahoo adventurers who have skied Bogus or just driven up to enjoy the day, I hope this whets your appetite for the season ahead. And for those who've never been to Bogus and perhaps never want to go up and see the snow, I hope to give you a little inspiration and a little appreciation of what a jewel we have in the mountains only 16 miles from town. We are all familiar with the two strings of power lines that go over the foothills to the north of us. As you get to that second power line, you can look back and you can see the Owyhee Mountains in the distance across the valley. It's my recollection that they are about 90 miles away at this point. You can see that on this day, sometime last fall, there was indeed a bit of a haze in the valley. As winter inversions set in, this is about the point where drivers to Bogus Basin come up into beautiful, clear air that's warmer than it is in the valley. The view of the valley is spectacular all the way up and down the face of the mountain. And shortly after you reach the tree line, you swing around to the north side of the hill. Suddenly, instead of being a few trees, you are in a forest. And the extra depth of the snow lets you know why. It isn't long before you can see Deer Point in the distance, and we have to drive between here around the side of the hill until we swing around on the other side of these towers. Deer Point leads down into an area called the Bowl and the Ridge, as well as the runs called Suicide. When I began skiing in the very late 50s, the T-bar that ran up to Deer Point was the only major lift at Bogus Basin. That was the same year that they opened up two Palma lifts that made an accessible area off to the left of where the T-bar ran. The two Palma lifts opened up what we now call Showcase and Alpine runs, which are served by what we now call Chair 4. Today, Bogus Basin skis 5 entire different sides of 2 different mountains. It is served by 2 lodges, 2 high-speed chairlifts, 4 regular speed chairlifts, and 1 very slow chairlift for learners. There are also extensive trails for cross-country skiing, a very nice lodge for cross-country skiers, and a separate hill for inner tubing. And this summer, they've installed this little device on the learner's hill. I'm not just sure how that works. Maybe it just carries them up the hill like a moving sidewalk. I remember chipping the ice off of the stairway that went up to the old lodge in order to work off a part of my pass. It wasn't much of a lodge, just a wooden building that had been built, I believe, by WPA or the Civilian Conservation Corps, but it served as a place for us to take off our old double-layer leather boots, let our feet rest a bit, and have some good old fries and burgers. Today there are 2 modern lodges, and thank goodness the steps are made of mesh that lets the snow fall through and you don't have to shovel them. Those of us who know skiing will recognize this as good old Chair 3, which opened up the backside of Schaefer Butte. Chair 3 was installed in order to reach the steeper, more expert slopes on the back of the hill. At the top of Chair 3, you see this slope coming down from the top of Schaefer Butte, which is only, another 50 feet or so higher. These people are skiing down from the top of Chair 6, which comes up the east slope of Schaefer Butte. And here is a little view of the Sawtooth Mountains as you see them from up on Schaefer Butte. The Sawtooths are to the east, and as we look to the west, we see the mountains and the valleys that go over past Horseshoe Bend and Emmett. Skiing around from the top of Schaefer Butte back toward the front side of the hill, you come upon what we call a cat track. You can actually see this cat track from the city. In the winter, it's a brown streak along underneath the top of Schaefer Butte, and even in the summer, you can see it cutting across the hill. During the summer, this cat track is a road that accesses the top of the hill. And just to get some overviews, we'll be following this road down into the base of the hill. Here we are looking at the towers that are on Deer Point. If you look under the towers, you'll see some little dots going up the hill, which are the ski lifts. You know, I have a little story to tell you about this particular spot on the cat track. One day I pulled over on my skis and looked down at this beautiful little bowl, this nice spot looking at the people skiing on the far hill and the snow and the clear air. It was a beautiful, beautiful day. And I got to thinking about one of my attitudes toward life and toward Boise. You know, I was raised being drug over the Sawtooth Mountains when I was a kid. And like a kid does, I had my opinions of thinking that there were more fun things to do. But in the meantime, I did take it for granted, and I certainly wouldn't replace that experience now. But having gotten used to the Sawtooths, to me, Bogus Basin and Schaefer Butte had always been a hill. To me, there were benches like you find south of town. There were little hills like you find south of town. And then there were hills like Schaefer Butte. And then there were mountains like the Sawtooths. Well, for years, that was just my attitude toward things. When I was working at the airport, people would come in and they say, well, if you call those hills, what do you call those? And I says, well, I suppose some people would call those mountains, but we call them hills because once you go to the Sawtooths, you'll understand. And it just happened that that table was actually going to the Sawtooths. So I told them, trust me, you'll know. Well, one day I was skiing along and I stopped and I looked from this very vantage point. I looked down into that basin. I was way above the second lodge, which is up on the hill. And of course, the lodge down in the bottom of the hill was much further down than that. I looked it up. The vertical skiing from the top of Schaefer Butte down to the bottom lodge is 1,800 feet. Well, 1,800 feet is what many people in the world would call a pretty good sized hill. And this, of course, is all just happening up on the top of Schaefer Butte. It's a long way above Boise. We start at 2,000 feet here in Boise, and we start skiing at, what, about 5,000 feet. So here I was looking down into this hill, and I was looking at my skis standing on the edge of this terrain that took off just about like this. And it just went like this, straight down. Well, not straight down, but at a pretty darn good angle, all the way down there for about 1,700 feet, 1,700 feet. And I looked at that and I thought, you know what? This ain't no hill. This is a mountain. And now, for those of you who have never skied, or those of you who have never taken the traverse all the way back to the bottom of the hill, here's a little movie. This traverse is called Cabin Traverse, The reason for that is there used to be a little falling down log cabin out here in the middle of these trees. When I was skiing this run in the spring of 2008, it had been a very good snow year. I could not see any record or any rendition or any remains of the cabin. I don't know if it's completely gone or not. I'd kind of like to go up in the middle of the summer sometime and check it out and see. Here we are coming on to a run called Alpine. This area was opened up by the two Palma lifts that I mentioned that were installed the year I started skiing. And today it is served by Chair 1 and Chair 4. Didn't have quite enough speed to get up to the end of the flags there, so had to put the skis in reverse. As we ski this nicely groomed run, you might notice that yours truly has a little trouble skiing in a straight line. My feet just love to do 360s. In fact, here's a little shot of that dizzy beer-drinking guide of yours, just so you'll understand what's going on when the camera is flipping around.
Woo!
One of the great delights of skiing Bogus Basin is that they stay open until 10 o'clock. Night skiing is a very beautiful experience. Often the wind dies down. There's this beautiful light on everything. It's quiet. There are few people there, so you ski right onto the lifts. You can do this after working all day long. It is a great resource for the city. As nice as night skiing is, however, one of the true delights is to be there during that half hour, 45 minutes, while the sun is setting across the valley and you see the dusk coming up the hill and finally enveloping us on the top of Bogus. Skiing through this snow is skiing in a rainbow, where the snow that you throw is a fusion of color. As the natural light fades, the artificial lights come on. The artificial lights are slightly different hues and colors, again carrying on the rainbow-like effect. Some of the prettiest evenings I've seen were when clouds were drifting up through the basin at Bogus Basin, catching the different colors from the lights also being on the snow. It truly is a treat. And finally, it gets dark. The city comes aglow beneath you, and you start to think about the dark ride down with this valley spread out, sparkling underneath you once you get to the front of the hill on the drive down. For the rest of the evening, the runs become lit in the soft glow and color of artificial light. And from about where Pioneer Lodge is, halfway up the slope to Schaefer Butte, you see the area of Deer Point lit up for skiing. Bogus Basin Resort. Not only a jewel because it makes skiing available to us here in the valley, but also a jewel simply because it is a jewel. This episode of Ski Bogus owes a special thanks of gratitude to the archivists out at the Idaho Historical Society Library on Penitentiary Road. If you're ever looking for photographs of the area or of Idaho from the good old days, there's no better place to start than the library at the Idaho Historical Society. You will find the staff completely competent and as cooperative and willing to help as possible. And if you should happen to have some old photographs or some old papers from some project that your ancestors might have worked on, don't throw them out. Those are important archives for somebody. Take them out to the Idaho Historical Society, again on Penitentiary Road, and see if they are something they can use. The Open Romance. A story of love and passion, inspired by the greens of golf. He was a handsome young lad with a career in golf looming before him. She was a sweet and charming young lady, equally as gifted at golf and equally as ambitious. They met on the very first day of the tournament, and it was love at first sight. They golfed together, they walked together, they went dining. Throughout the tournament, they could barely keep their minds on the game. At last, out of love and desire, the young man decided to put away all pretensions and tell her the truth, the ugly truth about himself. "Darling," he whispered, "I love you so much. I want to do what's right by you. I cannot tell a lie to you, and therefore I must tell you before we go on the truth about my being. The fact is, I just love golf. I eat golf. I breathe golf. I walk golf. I talk golf. Before you, there was nothing in my life but golf, golf, golf." She appreciated his honesty, of course. She looked him in the eye, and she said, "Well, John, if you're going to tell me such an honest truth before we have a relationship, there's a truth I must tell you as well. The fact is, I'm a hooker." "Well, I see," replied John. "It's probably because you're not keeping your wrists straight when you hit the ball." And that's another Beer Drinker's Guide to the Great Wahoo. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you next week. In the meantime, keep celebrating the Great Wahoo!